the judge handing down his sentence to Sean Diddy Combs, who he has ruled will spend 50 months in prison. So that's just over 4 years in prison for his crimes. Sean Combs has already been in prison for just over a year, so that means he will spend a further 3 years in prison. It's towards the lower end of the potential maximum sentence for the 2 counts of trafficking for prostitution, of which he was found guilty.
Something shifted this week in the entertainment world. The air around Hollywood feels heavier, quieter, as if an empire just collapsed under its own weight. Sean Diddy Combs, once a name that symbolized wealth, power, and charisma, now carries a completely different meaning. After decades of ruling the music industry and social circles that reached from New York to Los Angeles, he has been sentenced, and this time, there is no coming back. The man who built his reputation on control and confidence stood silent in court as the words "guilty" and "sentence" echoed through a room filled with the very silence he once forced on others. But this ending didn't appear out of nowhere. It was not a sudden scandal or a random downfall. This was years in the making, a slow, methodical unraveling of a man who believed he could outsmart both the law and the truth. For decades, Diddy had been untouchable. His connections reached boardrooms, red carpets, and even political circles. He had what many in Hollywood dream of influence, yet that same influence became the very thing that brought him down. To understand this moment, you have to go back to where the cracks first appeared. The whispers started quietly, small stories about private parties, odd behaviors, and uncomfortable experiences. At first, they were dismissed as jealousy or gossip, the usual noise that surrounds fame. But these whispers carried weight. They came from assistants, former partners, bodyguards, and people who had seen too much but said too little. Each voice was a small fracture in the wall of silence surrounding him. Then, in late 2023, Cassie Ventura, Diddy's former partner, and once his closest confidante, stepped forward with a lawsuit that changed everything. Her words were not vague accusations. They were precise, painful, and backed by details that only someone who had lived through them could know. What she described wasn't just personal abuse, it was an entire system of manipulation, power, and fear. And for the first time, the industry had to face a question it had avoided for years. How many people knew, and how many chose to stay silent? Cassie's courage became the spark that lit the fuse. Within weeks, more people began speaking out. Some quietly contacted investigators. Others shared their experiences online. And soon, it wasn't just about one woman's story, it became a federal case. Authorities had already been building files, quietly collecting evidence long before the headlines exploded. Wiretaps, financial trails, travel logs, all forming a map of a lifestyle that was less about glamour and more about control. When federal agents raided his homes in Los Angeles and Miami, what they found confirmed what many feared. Surveillance systems with hundreds of hours of recordings, documents pointing to money transfers that couldn't be explained, and communications hinting at witness intimidation. They weren't just looking for scandalous footage, they were looking for proof of trafficking, coercion, and organized abuse. It was all there, hidden behind walls of luxury, and yet, even as the walls closed in, the industry hesitated. Brands quietly pulled contracts, artists unfollowed him, and friends distanced themselves. But the real silence came from those who had built their success alongside him, people with as much to lose as he did. Because Diddy wasn't just a star. He was a gatekeeper, a bridge between the streets and the boardrooms, between culture and capital. If he fell, who else would fall with him? When the trial finally began, it was less a spectacle and more a reckoning. Prosecutors presented evidence that painted a picture of a man addicted to control of others, of his image, of every situation around him. Witnesses described parties that turned into nightmares, contracts that came with unspoken threats, and careers destroyed for refusing his demands. The jury didn't take long to decide. Inside the courtroom, as the sentence was read, Diddy didn't say a word, no emotion, no tears, just a look. The same cold stare that once made people fear him now looked empty, broken, and small. For the first time in decades, Sean Combs was no longer the one in charge. The man who once shouted "can't stop, won't stop," in every performance was finally stopped not by rivals, but by the truth. Outside, reactions poured in. Fans who had grown up on his music felt betrayed. Others said justice was long overdue. Celebrities scrambled to issue statements, some distancing themselves, others pretending they had never known him. But those who have watched this industry long enough knew something bigger was happening. This wasn't just Diddy's fall. It was a warning shot to everyone who believed their fame made them immune. Because behind every powerful man like Diddy, there are handlers, protectors, and beneficiaries, people who looked away, people who helped clean up the mess, people who thought the system would never touch them. Now that illusion is breaking. His sentencing doesn't close the story, it opens the door to a much larger one. The investigations haven't stopped. The files seized from his homes are still being examined. And the names being whispered in backrooms are getting louder. In the end, it wasn't the fame, the money, or the lawyers that could save him. It was the truth, the one thing he could never fully control. And as the court doors closed behind him, the message became clear to everyone still holding secrets in Hollywood. The walls are closing in, and this time, no amount of power can stop them. As the trial moved into its second week, it became clear that Diddy's downfall wasn't just about crimes, it was about secrets. The kind of secrets powerful men keep locked away in vaults, behind passwords, and inside the minds of people too scared to speak. But when the FBI raided his Los Angeles mansion earlier this year, what they found turned the case from a scandal into a full-blown national investigation. Agents left the property carrying dozens of sealed boxes, computer drives, and most disturbingly, over 200 surveillance devices. Cameras hidden in walls, ceilings, even furniture. Every corner of his home had eyes. According to insiders, these weren't just for security. Diddy was known for recording everything: parties, meetings, private encounters, all of it. Some called it paranoia, others called it insurance, because in Diddy's world, information was power. If someone crossed him, he didn't just threaten them, he reminded them what he had. Rumors suggest that some of the biggest names in entertainment and politics attended his infamous private gatherings, and that every move, every conversation, every moment was caught on tape. From billion-dollar music executives to actors, athletes, and even royal figures, no one knew when the cameras were rolling. Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, had been saying it for years that there were tapes, and those tapes held enough to ruin careers and shake entire industries. He claimed that Diddy used these recordings as leverage, keeping people loyal out of fear rather than respect. And when the federal government finally took those devices, many believed that was the real reason Diddy was arrested. It wasn't just about the allegations, it was about what was on those tapes. Investigators confirmed they found hundreds of hours of footage, but not all of it was presented in court. Only one video, the one Cassie provided to prosecutors, was shown to the jury. The footage from Diddy's house remained sealed. Federal sources quietly admitted that releasing those recordings could expose high-profile individuals unrelated to the current charges, which means those files could stay locked away for years. But why? Who are they protecting? That question has become the heartbeat of this entire case. Why did the prosecution avoid using the most explosive evidence? Why did one of the lead federal prosecutors suddenly retire right after the raid? Why did certain documents disappear from the case record just days before the trial began? Each unanswered question hints at something deeper, a network far more powerful than one fallen celebrity. Inside sources believe that Diddy's empire wasn't just about music and parties. It was a web of influence, blackmail, favors, and unspoken debts. Several insiders have suggested that major record labels, production companies, and even politicians relied on Diddy's ability to connect worlds that were never meant to collide. He brought executives from Wall Street into rooms with street rappers and made them feel safe, cool, and protected. But that illusion came at a cost, because once you stepped into his world, you were part of it forever. Those parties, the ones everyone whispered about but never dared to describe, are now the focus of multiple ongoing investigations. Former guests have confirmed that phones were confiscated at the door, that security guards were instructed to stay silent, and that assistants were paid to clean up after incidents. Drugs, alcohol, exploitation, and all of it allegedly caught on tape. And it wasn't just Diddy. The deeper investigators looked, the more names started to surface. Some of them were his oldest friends, people who had built their own empires standing beside him. Jay-Z, for instance, has been working overtime to distance himself, deleting photos, avoiding public statements, and reportedly cutting ties behind the scenes. Beyonce, once frequently seen with Diddy and Cassie, has gone silent too. Industry insiders say their legal teams are working around the clock to ensure none of their names appear in connection with seized material. Then there's Jaguar, right, a voice many dismissed as controversial until her recent interviews reignited the conversation. She claimed that Jay-Z, R. Kelly, and Diddy were all connected through a long-standing network of exploitation, and that what's happening now is only the beginning. Whether her claims are fully true or not, the timing of her statements right after the sentencing raised eyebrows across the industry. Meanwhile, smaller figures around Diddy's circle began to disappear from the public eye. Former assistants deleted their social media. One of his lawyers withdrew from the case mid-trial, citing personal threats, and an ex-security consultant fled the country just days before he was set to testify. It became clear that something much larger was being protected, and that not everyone wanted this truth to see daylight. Those who have worked in federal law enforcement know this pattern well. When too many powerful names appear in one file, the case becomes political. Evidence gets buried, witnesses get silenced, deals are made, and that's exactly what many believe happened here. Diddy was the fall guy, not innocent, but convenient. His sentencing satisfied public outrage, while the deeper rot remains untouched. Even so, the cracks are spreading. Since his conviction, multiple lawsuits have been filed naming other high-profile figures. Some of these cases involve incidents dating back more than 20 years. A few have already been quietly settled, others are moving toward trial. Every new filing brings fresh headlines, and every new headline brings more attention to those sealed tapes sitting in an FBI evidence locker. Because everyone wants to know what's on them, what did Diddy see, who did he record, and most importantly, who is the government protecting by keeping them hidden. Behind the scenes, journalists, podcasters, and legal analysts are fighting to make those files public, arguing that transparency is the only way to break the cycle of silence that's protected Hollywood's elite for decades. But insiders whisper that releasing them could destroy careers, families, and possibly entire companies. That's how deep this goes. At this point, one thing is clear: Diddy's fall isn't just a personal tragedy or a celebrity scandal. It's a mirror being held up to an entire culture built on power, privilege, and silence. The question isn't whether he's guilty. The court has already decided that. The question now is, who else will fall before this is over? Because if even half of what's on those tapes ever becomes public record, this won't just be the end of Sean Combs. It could be the end of an era. The sound of the gavel ending Diddy's sentencing didn't just echo inside that courtroom, it rippled through the entire entertainment world. It was the kind of sound that told everyone watching, the game has changed. For decades, men like Diddy ruled not just with fame, but with fear, the kind of power that comes from secrets, influence, and money that never seemed to run out. But now, after the sentence was handed down, the question hanging in every studio office, label boardroom, and celebrity mansion is simple: who's next? Because make no mistake, this wasn't an isolated case. What brought Diddy down wasn't a random scandal. It was a carefully built structure of corruption, protection, and silence that has existed in Hollywood for generations. And now that it's cracked open, the cracks are spreading fast. Within days of the sentencing, federal investigators reportedly began re-examining several older cases connected to high-profile entertainment figures. Some of these names had been whispered before producers, executives, even politicians, but were always protected by lack of evidence or political connections. That protection no longer looks so solid. The files recovered from Diddy's homes are said to contain communication logs, transaction records, and footage that point to a much broader circle of involvement. Sources close to the investigation claim that over 30 individuals, actors, artists, and executives are being quietly reviewed by the same task force that built the case against Diddy. Most of them haven't been named publicly, but in private circles, the fear is palpable. Industry lawyers have been flooded with calls from clients asking what to do if their names appear in those documents. The entertainment elite is suddenly realizing that the system that once protected them might now turn against them. For the first time in a long time, Hollywood looks nervous, not scandal, nervous survival nervous. The kind of nervous that comes when billion-dollar empires hang on a thread of evidence sitting in a federal vault. PR teams are on high alert. Record labels are reviewing old contracts, ensuring they're not connected to any of Diddy's past projects. Several major brands have quietly pulled sponsorships from artists who once had business ties with him. No one wants to be the next headline. The ripple effect is already visible. A-list celebrities who once celebrated him publicly are now pretending he never existed. Music channels have started quietly pulling old footage featuring Diddy. Streaming platforms are reevaluating his catalog, debating whether to remove songs or simply mute his name in metadata. It's a subtle kind of erasure, not of his art, but of his presence. It's Hollywood's way of saying, we knew nothing, even though deep down, many knew everything. But beneath all this corporate cleanup lies a deeper panic, the kind that can't be fixed by deleting photos or unfollowing accounts. Because this scandal has reopened old wounds, survivors who were once ignored are speaking again, emboldened by the outcome of this case. Lawyers representing other alleged victims have hinted that more lawsuits are coming, not just against Diddy, but against his business partners and associates. Several of these cases reportedly involve incidents spanning more than 25 years. And while Hollywood scrambles to manage damage, Washington is watching closely. Diddy's connections to politicians, lobbyists, and corporate donors are now under quiet review. Some congressional figures have privately demanded briefings on how deep his influence network went, particularly regarding donations to campaigns and nonprofits linked to him. The entertainment industry has always been intertwined with politics, but this time the threads are messy and dangerous. The media, too, has shifted tone. What started as gossip has turned into full-blown investigative journalism. Outlets that once celebrated Diddy's every move are now digging into the system that enabled him. Documentaries are already in production. Podcasts are being recorded. Former insiders are negotiating book deals. The story is no longer just about Sean Combs, it's about how America's entertainment machine created him, protected him, and finally destroyed him. Behind the scenes, there's talk of a new kind of blacklist forming, not one that punishes rebels or outspoken artists, but one that targets the enablers. Publicists, security consultants, and producers known to have cleaned up scandals in the past are being quietly phased out. Studios don't want anyone associated with that old culture near their brands anymore. It's not just a moral decision, it's survival. But this transformation won't be clean. Because if the Diddy case proves anything, it's that corruption doesn't die easily, it just hides until the light hits again. And right now, the spotlight is brighter than ever. The public's hunger for accountability has shifted. Fans who once worshipped celebrity culture are now demanding transparency, not just apologies. Social media is ruthless, it doesn't forget. Every photo, every rumor, every connection, it's all being dissected, frame by frame. In this new landscape, fear has replaced fame as the dominant currency. Those who once strutted through exclusive parties now move quietly, phones off, entourages smaller. The luxury cars still shine, but the eyes behind tinted glass are cautious. Everyone is watching everyone else, because the empire of silence that built the entertainment world is collapsing, and no one knows who will be buried under the rubble. Meanwhile, the government investigation continues. Officials have confirmed that they are still analyzing digital evidence of a sensitive nature, recovered from Diddy's properties. Unconfirmed reports suggest that the files could implicate figures from multiple industries, not just entertainment, but finance and politics as well. If that turns out to be true, this isn't just a celebrity scandal. It's a cultural reckoning. And as the dust settles, one truth becomes clear. Diddy's fall is more than the end of one man's career, it's a warning. For decades, Hollywood sold the illusion of untouchable power, of stars who could do anything and walk away clean. But that illusion is cracking, piece by piece. The sentencing of Sean Combs is not just a punishment, it's a message written across the skyline of Los Angeles. The era of silence is over, because when the lights go out and the cameras stop rolling, what remains is truth. And this time, the truth is louder than the music.